Granddaddy's Turn, A Journey to the Ballot Box. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button because there's plenty of good books to come. And let's get started. Granddaddy's Turn, A Journey to the Ballot Box. Where we lived, I didn't need an alarm clock. I woke up to the cock-a-doodle-doo of my pet rooster and the chugga-chugga-chugga of my granddaddy's tractor. "Hurry up, boy," he would shout. "I'm coming, Granddaddy," I'd say. "We got work to do," my granddaddy would say. "Hard work will keep you out of trouble." I guess he figured I was going to get in a whole passel of trouble because he sure gave me lots of chores. We fed the animals, we milked the cows, and we worked in the fields. My granddaddy was a big, strong man who always said he didn't take nothing off nobody. He could do anything, plow fields, chop wood, and dig fence posts, all without breaking a sweat. Not like me. Sometimes when I did my chores, I made so much sweat it was like I was raining. We worked together a lot, but we played a lot too. We really loved to go fishing. Sometimes I would complain when I didn't get a bite right away, but my granddaddy always said, "Patience, son, patience." One morning, while we were eating breakfast, my grandmother brought out a surprise for my granddaddy. She had cleaned and ironed his suit. I didn't understand that, since he only wore his suit to church, and it wasn't a church day. "It's our time, and you got to look your best," my grandma said. My granddaddy was so excited he leaped up from the table and gave her a big hug. "What's going on, Granddaddy?" I asked. "You'll see," he said with a big, beaming smile. I didn't like neckties too much, but since my granddaddy was wearing one, I guess I was too. "Y'all be careful now," my grandma said. "And don't forget to take pictures," she said, as she handed my granddaddy the camera. We walked and walked. It seemed like 100 miles. I asked my granddaddy where we were going again. "Patience, son, patience," he reminded me with a smile. Oh boy, I thought, we must be going to the county fair. I walked faster. I couldn't wait to get there. I could almost hear the music and smell the barbecue. "Where are all the rides and animals?" I asked my granddaddy. He laughed and said, "What are you talking about, son?" "I thought we were going to the county fair," I said. "Take a look around," my granddaddy said. "This is better than any old fair." Then I saw the "Vote Here" sign and shouted to my granddaddy, "Are you voting today?" "Yes, I am," my granddaddy proudly replied. Nobody in my family had ever voted before. Where we lived, some people were allowed to vote and some people were not. I never knew anyone who had voted before. But I heard my teacher say that some new laws had changed all that. I hoped that was true because I didn't want us to get in trouble. I felt like we were standing in line forever, and every time we seemed to get a little closer, someone would cut in line in front of us. That's just how things worked where we lived. It didn't seem to bother my granddaddy, though. He said, "Patience, son. Takes patience to get what you've got coming to you." When we finally got to the front of the line, my granddaddy proudly signed a paper and was handed a ballot. He clutched the ballot to his chest and said, "Son, this is the happiest day of my life." I took the camera from him and said, "Smile, Granddaddy." "Now come on, let's go vote," he said. But before we could even walk to the voting booth, a deputy stopped us and asked my granddaddy, "What are you doing, Uncle?" Where we lived, if the white folks didn't know your name, they usually called you either Uncle or George, or Auntie if you were a lady. "I'm voting today, sir," my granddaddy replied. The deputy got out a big, thick book and slammed it on the table. He opened it to a page with words that looked longer than crawfish. "Can you read this, Uncle?" the deputy asked. My granddaddy just stared at the pages and shook his head. "No, sir, I can't," he replied. The deputy slammed the book shut, saying, "Well, Uncle, if you can't read this, then you can't vote." He tore up my granddaddy's ballot and threw it on the ground. I was pretty sure that man wasn't playing by the rules, but he was in charge. I could see my granddaddy was mad. As we walked back down the road toward home, my granddaddy didn't say a word. But I saw something I'd never seen before. My big, strong granddaddy had tears in his eyes. "Don't worry, Granddaddy. I'll vote for you one day," I said to him. Granddaddy passed away before he ever got a chance to vote. I'll never forget that day he tried to vote. My granddaddy was so mad he might have lost his temper, but he knew better than me how important that day was. Even though it wasn't his time to vote that day, he looked to the future. When I went to vote for the first time, I remembered what my granddaddy always said: "Patience, son, patience." He was right. The day finally came, and I knew that, just like my granddaddy, I would never take it for granted. With his picture in my hand, I put my ballot in the box, smiled, and said to myself, "Now it's Granddaddy's turn." And then this tells a little bit about in the 1950s and 1960s, the civil rights movement helped dismantle the walls of racial segregation in the United States, brick by brick, from interstate transportation to access to education to the desegregation of public accommodations and housing. The last vestige of resistance in this struggle was voting rights. The pro-segregation establishment clearly understood the power of the vote. The concept of one person, one vote has always been the key to significant political and social change, the change that segregationists were not going to concede without a fight. Politically sanctioned nullification of voter rights was commonplace in Alabama and many other southern states. African American citizens were subject to various unethical methods of voter suppression, including poll taxes and birth record challenges. Perhaps the worst of these tactics was the so-called literacy tests. These tests were usually administered by the polling officials toward any individual who was considered undesirable. The potential voter was handed a booklet or pamphlet, which often consisted of a difficult Elizabethan text or complex legal language. The voter was asked to read the document aloud and to explain in detail to the polling official what the passages meant. If the explanation was not deemed up to par, the voter was dismissed and not allowed to vote. Through these tactics, thousands of individuals were denied their constitutional right to vote. Many were also harassed or hurt, and some were even killed. Fortunately, these practices were ultimately stopped with the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, landmark legislation signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. There's the rest of the story about the voting practices back then. So thankfully that has ended, and now, before you vote, please just make sure you consider the issues and know what you're voting for. This was called Granddaddy's Turn, a journey to the ballot box. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you subscribe and come back often, and I'll see you next time.